Hey guys, it's Obsessed Turf. Welcome back to another episode. And this one is again inside the house before the weather starts warming up. We actually got another snowstorm, so it's been hurry up and wait. We're at the near the end of February. We're in the last week of February, and I'm sure you're chomping at the bit just as much as I am to get out there and do some things in the lawn. But one of the things that I wanted to do, because I have such a comprehensive plan, it's a customized, tailored plan specifically for my lawn. And I was planning on doing this, but I had a viewer and made a comment that said, can you offer any input for those that aren't obsessed about their lawn and they just want basic lawn care tips? And so, like I said, I had already planned on doing that, but I was really glad to hear this person comment about that because there seems to be a need for it. And quite frankly, I think that when I listen to videos from other lawn care channels, although they are very, very knowledgeable people, they are really up there when it comes to the techniques and things that they're doing to their lawn. And I wanted to make a video that had something to do with more of just back to the bare basics. And I know that there are some videos out there that's the intention, but it seems like they start to impart all of this wisdom and experience that they have. And next thing you know, I can just see the deer in the headlights on some of these people that are watching the video just because it's so advanced, right? So the goal for this video is, what if I were talking to my 23-year-old self 29 years ago, when I bought my first house? What would I tell that person when they were first starting out? The bare essentials. What are the bare minimum things that you need to just have a good lawn? You're not looking for something that's phenomenal. You just want the bare basics of what it is that you could do to keep a nice lawn in the neighborhood. So that's what this video is about, just to preface that. And also to preface to let you know that this is geared more towards cool season lawns. So that's all I know. That's all that I've taken care of over the years that I've owned homes. So that is what this is going to be geared towards. But these things that I'm going to go over with you are really about just the basics of any lawn care, whether that's cool season or warm season grasses. But understand that there are going to be different variations of the things that I'm going to go over that will apply to whether you're working in a warm season lawn compared to working in a cool season lawn. So please keep that in mind. And if you have questions about any of it, don't hesitate to reach out. Comment below, or my email is in the description. Feel free to shoot me an email. So let's get into it. So to keep this all into perspective, this approach is also about not having to drop a bunch of money. I wanted to try to keep it budget friendly as well as user friendly for just straight up beginners. So if you're a little advanced, I encourage you to watch the video, but this is geared towards people that are very early in the process, literally 101 when it comes to lawn care. So the number one thing, no matter what kind of lawn you have, no matter where you live, no matter what you're doing, the number one thing that you're always going to have to do is mowing. This is by far the pinnacle of all lawn care success, is going to be mowing. And it breaks down into three categories. So you've got the equipment, the actual mower itself. It doesn't matter if you have electric or if you have gas. I've used both. There are pros and cons to each one, and we won't go into that into this video. But the main thing that a mower does is it cuts your lawn. And what does it cut it with? It cuts it with a blade, right? So if you've got a mower that's older, then the very first thing you want to do is make sure that mower blade is sharp. If it's not sharp, consider sharpening it. And even more so, if it's been a while, let's say you've had the mower for 5+ years, consider replacing the blade itself. Just go ahead and replace the blade. That is going to be probably your better option on a mower that has an older blade on it. Just keep that in mind when it comes to the mower itself. It has to have a sharp blade. As far as how often you sharpen it, I think they recommend 20 to 25 hours of use to sharpen it. And the easy way to do that is just maybe twice a year. So you sharpen it first thing in the spring, and then halfway into the growing season, you'll sharpen it again. But understand the keys of mowing. You're going to hear me say this because this is something I came up with last year, and that is, if it's growing, we're mowing. That's it. Like, you have to make sure that you're consistently mowing on a regular schedule. The frequency of mowing is so key. If you are mowing on a regular basis and you're not letting that grass get too long, you're going to save yourself a lot of headache, and you're going to benefit your lawn better. Make sure you're mulching the lawn too. If you've got a bag on the mower, try to refrain from using that bag unless it's under special circumstances. The main reason why I would bag my clippings is if the lawn has gotten a little too long and I don't want to have clumps of grass on my lawn. I will bag the clippings then. There are other reasons we won't get into, but if you use your bag, do it if you have missed the mowing, maybe you went on vacation or maybe you just got too busy. Go ahead and bag those clippings so that they don't lay on your lawn, because that can create issues that we can cover in another video. But the frequency, if you're mowing on a very frequent basis, you're going to stay within what they refer to as the 1/3 rule, and that is don't cut any more than 1/3 of your grass blade. So if you're cutting more than 1/3, then that's when you're going to really stress out the lawn, as well as the clippings may be too large and create other issues. Your height, that's the other thing that you want to make sure that you keep an eye on. Generally speaking, you're looking at about 3 inches. That can be a little lower, 2.5, up to about 3.5, maybe even a little higher or shorter. But I would say for most people, if you're at that 3 to 3.5 inch height of cut, that is about the sweet spot when it comes to your height of cut for your lawn. Main reason being is because it's going to serve a couple of purposes. The first thing is that it's going to be tall enough that it helps to retain moisture in your lawn. So when you get into drought situations, because you have taller grass, it's shading the soil better when the grass is taller, and therefore you're going to be able to hold moisture into your soil a little bit easier and reduce the amount of evaporation that you're having in the lawn. The other thing is that it helps to shade out weed development. So you're serving two purposes by keeping that higher grass growth. You're able to drought resistance and suppress weeds. So the next thing that you want to think about after mowing is going to be a watering schedule. Now, this is something you don't have to do, but I think it's important to strongly consider watering if you want to maintain that green lawn throughout the dry periods. You can rely on Mother Nature, and you can actually go and have your lawn go into dormancy. If you don't want to spend the money on watering your lawn, by all means don't do it, and it's okay. Your lawn will go into a dormant state and it will kind of go to sleep and use less resources, but that means that the lawn will go brown as well. One of the things that you want to be aware of, though, is that if you are not getting rain for 3 or more weeks, you might want to consider putting a little water on that, at least a quarter, probably more like a half an inch of water. Ideally, you're putting on about an inch of water per week. So if you can get a combination of rain and irrigation into your lawn that equates to 1 inch per week, that is the ideal thing. That's personally what I try to shoot for. But man, last year we had a stretch of about 6 weeks, no kidding, 6 weeks where we had pretty much no rain. And then when it did rain, it was like little droplets and it was evaporated in no time. Everyone's lawn was crispy. And I'll show you this video here, or a picture of what that looks like. But the idea is that if you go into dormancy, those lawns that were all crispy around me, they came back. There were some areas, because we were dry for so long, there were some areas of their lawn that did not come back, and so they ended up with a little bit of some bare spots and patchiness in their yard. To avoid that, if you go about 3 weeks without rain, just go ahead and put about a half inch water. That will help maintain the survival of your lawn until you come out of your drought. And so if you do decide that you want to water, the time of day is really important. You want to make sure that you're watering in the early morning hours. I typically start my irrigation around 4 a.m. So it's done after going through, I have 8 zones on my irrigation. So after it's done, it's about 4.5 hours to run through all of the zones. So when it's done, it's very early in the day, and it gives the surface water time to evaporate, because you don't want to water in the evening and let that sit on, especially in warm environments, on the lawn throughout the evening and overnight, because that can increase disease pressure. So make sure you're doing your watering earlier in the day so that it has time for that moisture on the top to evaporate off and reduce fungus issues. And so then the next step is going to be your fertilization program. Now again, remember that I am making this video if I am talking to my younger self, and I had to think about what type of fertilizer I would get, and I ended up reducing it down to just one fertilizer that you can apply 2 to 3 times per year. And this will be a fertilizer that I would personally recommend to myself if I just wanted to keep it as basic as possible. I did a lot of research to try to find this out, and the one that I landed on was right here. It's the Lawn Synergy 20010 Almighty Lawn Fertilizer. And what this is it's a 20% nitrogen, which nitrogen is king. That's the one that's going to create your growth, your green up, and all of the beautiful part of your lawn. But then there's that 10% potassium that's going to deliver potash to your soil to help the lawn with stress. And that's going to be heat stress primarily, but it can also aid in cold stress and winter stress as well. But the idea with the 20-0-10 fertilizer is that you're going to get 20% nitrogen and 10% potassium. You'll notice that there's a 0 phosphorus. Phosphorus is something that's not necessarily needed in the lawns, and I would say of the 3 macros, that is the least important macronutrient that you need to worry about, especially for just general existing lawn care maintenance. Phosphorus is really good for starter fertilizers when you're trying to overseed and things like that. So don't be too concerned about that middle number. Now, when we talk about the 20, that's not really high, right? But the key with nitrogen is that not only does it create green grass, it can accelerate top growth. And what we want to do is we want to manage that top growth development. We don't want the top growth to go too crazy, because I don't know about you, but I'm not real crazy about mowing my grass every other day if I don't have to. So if I can slow the rate of growth but still have the green up, that's a win-win. So what this fertilizer also has is 3.4% iron. So iron is something that's going to give you the green up if it has the nitrogen, 20%. So with those two combined, you're getting the green up with less growth. And that is why I would choose this fertilizer. Now understand that nitrogen and iron are fairly quickly mobile in the soil or the plant, so it doesn't last a long time, but you're just looking for the basics. So I hope that's helpful. But with fertilizer, remember I said 2 to 3 times per year that you're going to do that. If you're not watering, you probably only want to fertilize twice, once in the spring, once in the fall. In that summer time frame, if it tends to be drier than usual, but if you happen to have a decent amount of rain, maybe you could put down some fertilizer. But if you're not going to water, I would probably recommend not putting down fertilizer like at the peak of the summer month. Try to avoid that because you're really not going to get the benefit from your fertilizer usage. So the mowing, the watering, the fertilization, those are the 3 core things that I would say are important to keeping a decent lawn. That's like the lawn trifecta, if you will, right? But there may be some other things that you have to deal with. And the next step is weed controls. There's actually 3 forms of weed control. There's manual removal, there's pre-emergent, and then there's post-emergent. Manual removal is you see a weed, you dig it out with your hand or a tool. I've not been a fan of that because it's time consuming and it's just not my preference. But when it comes to pre and post-emergent, you need to understand that these 2 work very differently. And again, talking to my younger self, here's what I would do when it comes to pre and post emergence. First and foremost, let's talk about how there are a lot of fertilizers out there that will offer, it's a lawn fertilizer plus it will have a pre-emergent or a post-emergent component to it. So one of the big ones is the Scott's Halts with crabgrass preventer that's built into it, right? That is okay, but I'm not a fan of it because it has a little more nitrogen that I would want to apply when I want to put down a pre-emergent. So what I would tell my younger self is go ahead and get the crabgrass preventer on its own or pre-emergence on its own, right? So this is one that I would probably use if I were to do this program. And this would allow me to do my fertilization separately because pre-emergent needs to go down before the plant emerges. That is what that's all about, right? It's pre-emergent is pre, before, post-emergent is post, after. So if you can see it, it's post-emergent. If you can't see it, it may be, and most likely is, pre-emergent. So the thing with pre-emergent is that it doesn't stop weed germination. The weed seed will still germinate. What it does do is it creates a barrier that prohibits root growth and development and establishment of that weed. So it germinates into a seedling and then it's stopped in its tracks. So that is what a pre-emergent does. So because of the pre-emergent and how that works, I would recommend that you put that down in a granular form. That's going to allow you to put this into a spreader and then put that out into your lawn. You water it in, and then it dissolves and creates that barrier to stop any seeds from developing. Then there is post-emergent. So that is going to be when you actually see weeds present, you treat that weed with a post-emergent herbicide. And what that is usually I would recommend a foliar spray. So you're going to see that weed and you're going to spray it with a foliar spray. And there are two different types of sprays when it comes to herbicides. There is selective and there is non-selective. Just to give you a basic idea of the difference between the two, selective is it's being selective on what it's addressing. Non-selective is it's not being selective. So use an example of time. You know, you're selective of how you use your time, right? You're selective of who you spend it with, what you're doing, when you're doing it, how you're doing it, right? You're going to be selective. You're going to be picky about how you spend your time. Well, a selective herbicide does the same thing. It's selective on what it's going to eradicate. So if you have a broadleaf selective herbicide, it's specifically addressing or eradicating broadleaf weeds, right? So you spray the broadleaf weed, and the fact that you've maybe gotten some of that on the grass blade, it's not designed to attack the grass, only the weed. So when you spray it, it doesn't matter what it hits, it's only going to attack the weed. Now it may distress the grass, depending on what type of grass you have. It may distress it a little bit and stress it out a little bit, but it will likely not kill the grass and it will recover as the weed dies off. And then that's how you get rid of your weeds. If you've got a larger weed issue, I would recommend doing some sort of weed be gone product. Again, be careful on what type of grass you have and what would be the best thing. But that would allow you to do broadcast over your entire lawn if you've got a huge weed issue. However, but what I use as far as my selective herbicide is Roundup for lawns. Do not confuse it for regular Roundup. Regular Roundup is non-selective. It doesn't care what you spray it on, it's gone. So that is what the Roundup does. Roundup for lawns is just going to attack broadleaf weeds and keep your lawn safe. So that is, in a nutshell, that is everything for not only maintaining your lawn, but making sure that you are taking care of weeds that are in your lawn. And that is, I would say, the most the average person would want to deal with in their lawn. But let's give you some bonus info if you're interested in it. The first thing would be overseeding, and that would be, mainly finding a seed that is for your climate, for the zone that you're in, and maybe the type of lawn that you're trying to achieve. You can do the proper research to figure out what you want to do for that. But the main thing about overseeding is the time that you put it down, right? And the ideal time that I've pretty much always selected for overseeding or even repairing bare patches and things like that is going to be in the fall. That is the ideal time to do an overseed, and we can certainly cover that in future videos. The other thing is pest control. So some people may have issues with certain insects and things like that. So that would be something that you could also consider doing. I wouldn't recommend pest control. I've never really used pest control too much unless I had an issue. Now my customized plan is going to be a little bit more preventative. So I've got a lot of things that I'm doing that on a preventative measure just to avoid the potential of things. But I think for the average person, you don't have to worry about a preventative pest control product. And if you do that in the early spring, I'd say late April, early May would be for us here in Central Ohio. But as it relates to pest control, if you want to do a preventative measure once in the spring, kind of mid to late spring, you should probably be pretty good. Again, that late April, early May time frame. And that would be a good time for your pest control. And then the last thing, which I think is the pinnacle of lawn care, is going to be understanding your soil health. And so even though this is bonus content as far as, some additional things you can do, that is something that I think is very important. So if you really do start to get into getting more serious about your lawn, understanding what's going on in your soil is huge. That is a game changer. But I went years without doing a soil test and had pretty good lawns. So it's not a full requirement, but if you're really wanting to step it up, then I would say a soil test is key. So let's wrap this up with recapping what we did, but then some supplemental things that would be very beneficial for you to have in your lineup when you're taking care of your lawn. So we talked about mowing, but there's also trimming and edging, and this is going to be a very useful tool around your sidewalks, around mailboxes, the edge of your flower beds, all of that stuff along your driveway. This is going to be a very useful tool to help trim along the edges where your mower is not able to cut the grass. The other thing is going to be a spreader. We talked about fertilizer applications. Kind of hard to do that without a spreader. There are actually two types of spreaders. There's broadcast and there's drop spreaders. I prefer rotary or broadcast spreaders because this is the type that's going to shoot the product out rather than dropping it straight down. Drop spreaders tend to be a little bit more precise, but you can also miss with drop spreaders, whereas broadcast kind of shoots it out and there's more chance for you to overlap with your product and have less issues where just you have lines going through your lawn. I had that issue with a drop spreader. But with a broadcast spreader or a rotary spreader, I actually use the Scotch Edge Drop because you can stop it from shooting over into your sidewalk or your flower beds and things like that with this edge guard turned on. So that's pretty nice to have that to minimize the amount of product that you're getting in areas that you don't want the product to be in. And on that note, another thing that I would recommend using is a blower to blow off your driveway and your sidewalk. Of course, you can use a broom, and I did that quite a while before I got my first blower, but that's an option as well. And then the last thing when it comes to watering, of course, if you are going to decide to water and you don't necessarily want to spend the money for an irrigation system, you'll just need a hose and a sprinkler. And so this is a sprinkler that I actually had used a variation, a couple of different types of this sprinkler. And it's an oscillating sprinkler and it gets the job done, and it has great coverage and it's adjustable coverage. So if you've got a narrow strip or you've got a wider strip, this can kind of help you dial it in to target and not waste water by spraying in areas that you don't need the water to be. So that's it, guys. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. Again, my lawn care regimen is nuts this year. I can't wait to share it with you. And I'm just going to be recording. I'm out in the yard every week, literally. I think in July, I'm not out there much, but for the most part, I am out there all the time. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to put those in the comments or shoot me an email. Email's in the description. But guys, I'm going to be out there doing my thing, and I hope that you will follow along. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and again, let me know if you have any comments below. But until next time, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.